Before we dive into the discussion, may I please request Mr. Claudiu to take the dais for their presentation. So I would welcome you onto the dais. Can we have the remote to just control the presentation? If someone can share that with us on the stage.
We are trying to negotiate the presentation time now. So I'm very happy to be here again. I just counted that in the last 12 months I've been, including this one, 4 times in India, in Delhi and in Mumbai, and I really love this country. So let's start now because we are limited on time. I'm going to present on the global S&D, and then I will start with my beloved Jiddu Krishnamurti. A mind that is full of conclusions is a dead mind, okay? So let's not be full of conclusions and let's learn together and be prepared to discover together things. Where do we stand now? Where the world stands now? We are in a smaller surplus expected for this season, and then the main responsible for this situation are 2 countries, India and Pakistan. Okay. India, because production was supposed to be higher. Okay, everybody expected a drop in production in India, but not as much as is now vehiculated everywhere. And then Pakistan also had a bombastic approach towards the production. The countries are neighbors. In fact, it was only one country before. So the problems are almost the same. The yields are not good in Pakistan. So we had to come down from about 1.4 million tons of surplus this year to about 300,000 tons only in surplus. But next season looks better, and again is due to India. So India is playing an increased role in the global S&D. Now, we know from the past that even if India had a very important role, sugar didn't go out of India in the past because it was capped. But I think there is a lot of room for exports next season. We have some scenarios because we don't have a crystal ball. We don't really know what production will be, and we have 3 scenarios. The lowest scenario still sees a global surplus for the next season of about 3.8 million tons, okay? The other one, the largest one, sees a surplus of about 5.8. So we can be somewhere around 4.8 million tons, depending on how much others will produce. These scenarios, you will see the presentation later, consider a certain production in Thailand. Others work with bigger numbers in Thailand. Thailand is also an increased player now, has an important role, and then we will see now in the March expiry if they will present something or not. And then, of course, India and the policy for ethanol that we discussed up until now. Will India manage to blend next year 5 million tons of cane diverted to ethanol, or 5.5 or 6, or how much it will be? Okay, it will be great for the industry to have a 6 million tons diversion, but not many are sure about that because we've seen what happened this year. Okay, so nothing shall be taken for granted. Now, look at the global picture. We see here that the global production growth shall outpace the global consumption growth next season. And global production growth is estimated at 3.3% year-on-year increase, while consumption will recover a tad, probably to 1% because of lower prices, but we still will not reach 2% increase as we had last year's, mainly because I would say sugar is kind of demonized in the northern hemisphere, and many countries are advancing with their tax policy on sugar. Consumption growth, consumption trend is there, but just to mention that this 0.9% consumption growth represents about 1.8 million tons more sugar needed This probably next season is not a big deal, but we will have a big deal when India or Brazil is not producing as much, right? Because consumption is kind of a linear function, and we will reach a level at a moment, let's say in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where consumption is at a certain level and production doesn't follow. Now, we will have higher South American availability. Many are betting on a bigger sugar mix in Brazil because this year they didn't manage to go on it, but next season probably they will manage to maximize it and go above 50%. Will it be 51%? Will it be 51.5? We don't know. This will depend on the sugar ethanol parity, right? And then if prices continue to collapse, we will reach the ethanol parity. And at that level, remember, 30% of the Brazilian industry doesn't hedge the sugar. Now, here the table presents the top sugar producers in the world, split by white and rose. I will not insist too much on this table. You have time to study. The problem is this, okay? Many are white sugar producers. We have just one big region that is focused on rose, and this is Center-South Brazil. So whatever happens in Center-South Brazil is an impact on the raw sugar market. Probably next season we will see 1 million here diverted to raw sugar in India, be it export or maybe domestically sourced by tolling refineries to export refined. There is room for that. Now, Brazil should pick up in terms of production, and so will do Thailand. On the net trade flows, what we see now, we see kind of a balanced situation for Q1 and for Q2. Why? We were in a deficit. So if I remember this chart, let's say 4 months ago, we've seen about 1 million deficit in Q1. Why it was so much? Because Indonesia was supposed to import much more. India was supposed to source the sugar in Q1 and in Q2 from Brazil, and now we have reasons to think that about 200,000 tons maybe will be sourced locally, local rows, then exported into the international market. And then we had Brazil bringing more sugar into the market, right? We had a very good tail of the crop in Brazil. So now we are quite balanced, but still we are missing about 150K to complete the Q1, to put the Q1 in balance. Specs switched to a bearish mood, and practically they determined this drop in prices. We see here the chart, okay, the magenta color shows the position of the specs lately. We see that they are increasing their presence on the net short side. Last week and 2 weeks ago, China bought, so that's why now they reduced their position a bit, but the mood is a bearish one for the funds. Remember this, because funds, they don't sit on a position just for 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. They generally, when they tend to switch side from bearish to bullish or from bullish to bearish, they sit on a position 6 months, 1 year, 2 years even, right? So we see if the market goes against them. Sometimes the market went against them. But I would rather think that with the Brazilian crop ahead, they will still sit on a short position. How much short? We don't know, but from, let's say, 50K lots to 150K lots, they can sit there. Now, you will say, can they go much more? Yes, they went to close to 300K, but I don't think now they really have this opportunity, because we will see in the next slides, and I'll be short on that, that the ethanol parity is advancing in Brazil. So that is the position of the funds. And then, of course, we said, how low? Because people ask me, how low can we go? How low? We are collapsing now. And the prices, China was a very good a very good floor, okay, China buying. And we see here the calculation done for the arbitrage into China and what levels this arbitrage opens, import arbitrage. So from now on, let's say the arbitrage opened between 17.4, okay, and 16.4. Depending on the month, depending on the cash premium applied in Brazil, so on and so forth, okay? But now we have another player in the market, and this is Thailand. You see, Thailand, this table from the bottom shows the Thai import arbitrage, and on spot, Thais are more competitive than Brazil. Why? Because Brazil is not producing now anymore. Brazil will produce in April. Now, high pole cash premiums reacted, and then you see the right-hand side, on the right-hand side, the chart, and Thai high poles in black are very low, and they are even collapsing more. And if they go down to the ground, then Thailand will have the incentive to deliver to the tape, unless something happens again, and then the HK collapses. But I think 150 was a fair price for HK. Now, on crystal sugar, we had pressure on Brazilian crystal sugar, and lately a recovery in the refined cash premium in MENA, because they were realized that still they want the refined, and there is not much refined around. And then in West Coast Africa, we've heard yesterday some indication, Brazilian refined at $104 on top of London, delivered their CNF. So Europeans are reaching that territories at the same level. So there is demand on refined, not too much refined now. That's why I think the white premium will be supportive up until October and up until the new crop in India. Now, very quickly on regional. We had big exports in Brazil this year, almost at the same levels as last season, which was a record season in terms of VHP. We don't have stocks now in Brazil. It's very low, the level of stocks. Very low. Look at the stocks compared to last year, okay? At the end of February, 2.8 compared to more than 4 last year. So there is a drop in stocks. They don't have so much availability like last year. So that's why probably March will still remain sustained up until expiry. Then the ethanol floor is picking up in Brazil. You see it was around 13, okay, the table was bigger, but I cut it. 13 was, gradually went to 14, 14.6, 15. If the Brazilian real, in the column there, you see it going back to 5.8 or 5.5. We can push up this ethanol parity level to even 17 cents, right? It's a direct correlation with the real. And then here we see the chart represented that the ethanol parity in Brazil is going higher. Still sugar pays better than ethanol by 400 points, but we see a recovery in ethanol. The estimates for next season, okay? We don't work with sugar mix more than 50.5%. The trade is about at 51%. I don't believe this number now because I see that sugar now is kind of shrinking. People are not really happy. So ethanol is picking up. Maybe some mills will say, why should I do a contract on sugar and then wait for the money to come in 1 month? No, I will sell ethanol domestically. Okay, if you are a mill farther from the port in Minas Gerais or in Goiás or in another state of Brazil, then you will say, okay, ethanol works better for me, right? Because their parity is not 15, maybe it's 16 now. So about 42 million tons of sugar produced in the next season compared to 40 this season. So a bit more sugar. But attention, the mix could not hit 50.5%. Maybe we go only to 50 or maybe to 49.5, who knows, right? So it's a big risk in Brazil in terms of this mix because everything is depending on where the parity is. If July collapses to 15.5, they will maximize ethanol. It didn't rain so much in January. Okay, we have to take care also of the K number. Were good rains in October, November, December, okay, but January, not so good. The Indian balance sheet. Now I know there is a lot of talks in India, how much is production, how much is, nobody has a crystal ball. We are at 27.7, we started close to 29, we reduced a lot. Let's see, will UP have a sudden death or not? Will Maharashtra have a sudden death? We've seen mills closing down, production level is not so good now, but next season is big. Okay, so probably 33 million tons of sugar produced next season. There is room for exports. And this year, there was also room for this 1 million tons of exports. There's no problem. We see here opening stocks at 8.2, closing stocks close to, let's say, 6 million, maybe 5.8, 5.7, depending on where production finishes. But I would just put something here. If Indian production this year really goes to 27 or 26.5 or whatever, the world will be in deficit. That's clear. Okay, so we are just 300K surplus now, global balance for 24-25. Now, again, here the changes between before the quota announcement, export quota, and after. We see the changes to probably more rows taken domestically for the tolling refineries. And another thing is the alternative exports to Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan would be replaced by official sugar, right? So maybe only 300K will go there undocumented, I would say, and then the rest will be documented. So when people ask me abroad, what was the reason for these exports? Doesn't solve too much in the world balance. I said, you don't have to see it only world balance, you have to see also the Indian balance sheet, right? Domestic prices were collapsing, regulating these unregulated exports, right? So there were more things, so there are more benefits to have this 1 million. In Thailand, we see a recovery in production, but we don't go ballistic for the next year because I've heard numbers for next year of production, sugar production, close to 12.6, even 30 million tons. We don't go so high. We've seen that also this year they start to have some problems. Okay, so probably 10.5, 10.7 million tons of sugar produced. This completes my presentation and I'm ready for the panel discussion.
I would like to thank Mr. Claudiu for sharing his valuable perspective, thoughts and ideas with us, and thank you for that wonderful presentation.